The wind howled like a beast across the endless white plains. Snow whipped against the jagged cliffs, biting at her skin through the thick layers she wore. Mira shivered, not just from the cold, but from fear. Every step she took sank deep into the snow, slowing her down. She was weak, exhausted, and the frozen wasteland seemed endless. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Each exhale formed clouds that quickly vanished into the icy air. Myra's legs ached, and her hands were numb. She had no idea how long she had been running. Hours? Days? Time had lost meaning in this frozen nightmare. The silence was crushing, broken only by the whisper of the wind and the crunch of her boots against ice. She stumbled and fell, hitting the hard snow with a painful thud. Pain shot through her side. Her pack had torn open somewhere along the way, and her supplies were almost gone. Myra's eyes scanned the horizon, but there was nothing, just snow, ice, and endless gray sky. Her hope was fading. Then, she remembered why she was here. The mission had been simple at first: deliver the data to the human outpost on the edge of the ice. But everything had gone wrong. Raiders had attacked, stealing supplies and leaving destruction behind. She had barely escaped with her life. Now, alone and injured, she was on the edge of death. Mira forced herself to sit up. She pressed her hands into the snow to stop them from shaking. She whispered a quiet lullaby, not for anyone else, but to calm herself. It was a song her mother had taught her long ago, a song of hope, even in the darkest times. The wind howled back, almost as if mocking her. Myra's eyes closed for a brief moment, and she imagined warmth, safety, and the smell of firewood. But the harsh reality was still there, and it was unforgiving. Suddenly, she froze. A sound, different from the wind, cut through the frozen silence. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, and human. She had been alone for so long that the sound startled her. Her heart raced. Could it be friendly humans? Or raiders hunting her down? She pressed herself into a small dip in the snow, hoping to stay unseen. Her eyes scanned the horizon, trying to see through the blowing snow. There, shadows moving against the white expanse. Humans. Not many, but definitely alive. They were approaching, boots crunching on the ice. Myra's mind raced. Should she call out? Wait and hide? Every instinct screamed caution, but another part of her, a part she had kept alive despite the cold and fear, wanted to move toward them. They might be the help she desperately needed. The footsteps grew louder. She could hear voices now, muffled but unmistakable. Humans were here. Alive. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to cry, to laugh, to collapse from relief, but she held herself together. As they came closer, Mira noticed their gear. They were well equipped, carrying supplies, weapons, and something that looked like scanners. They were not raiders. They were explorers, or soldiers, from the human outpost. Myra's lips moved in a silent plea. Please, don't leave me here. She struggled to her feet, fighting the numbness in her limbs. The snow dragged at her boots, but she stumbled forward anyway. One of them spotted her first. A tall figure broke away from the group, moving toward her cautiously. Mira froze, unsure whether to run or stand. The figure stopped a few feet away and raised a hand, not in aggression, but in greeting. You're alive, the figure said, voice calm but firm. Hold on. We'll get you out of this. Myra's knees gave way, and she almost fell into the snow. Relief and exhaustion collided in a torrent of emotion. She whispered a shaky, thank you, barely audible over the wind. But the moment of hope was not yet complete. Behind the rescuers, shadows moved in the snow. Something else was out there, watching. Something dangerous. Mira realized that even though help had arrived, the frozen wasteland was far from safe. She gritted her teeth and stood tall, despite the cold and pain. If she was going to survive, she had to move fast. The humans approached, boots crunching in rhythm with her racing heartbeat. This was only the beginning. The frozen silence was broken, and Myra's story, her fight for life, her journey through the cold, and the mystery waiting in the ice, was just starting. The rescuers reached Mira just as her strength gave out completely. The cold was merciless, and every movement felt like dragging through stone. One of them, a tall figure with a hooded visor, knelt beside her, checking her pulse and murmuring something she couldn't hear. Relief and fear battled in Myra's chest. She was alive, but for how long? "Hold on," the figure said. "We've got you." The warmth of the human touch was almost painful after the endless cold, but it anchored her to reality. Mira wanted to ask who they were, why they had come, but words failed her. The snow around them swirled violently, as if the wind itself was trying to erase them from existence. They lifted her onto a sled-like device, gliding over the ice with eerie precision. Myra's head lolled to one side, and through her half-closed eyes, she saw the expanse stretching endlessly, snow blending with sky, white becoming gray, and gray becoming something darker, almost alive. Her saviors spoke little, their attention fixed on the horizon. Myra's curiosity forced her to ask, "Who are you?" One of them, a woman with sharp eyes glowing faintly through the visor, replied, "We're from the outpost. We track lost humans, and things that should not exist." Myra's heart skipped. Things that should not exist. Her mind flashed back to the attacks, the empty fields littered with debris, and the strange tracks that had followed her through the snow. She had thought it was raiders, but now, what if it was something else? The wind howled louder, carrying a hollow sound that made Mira shiver. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the ice, moving faster than the wind. The rescuers tightened their formation, scanning every direction. Their scanners emitted soft pulses of light, illuminating figures in the distance, vague, shifting shapes that disappeared as quickly as they appeared. Mira gripped the sides of the sled. Her body trembled not from cold alone. What is that?" she asked. The tall figure didn't answer immediately. His visor reflected the endless white, but Mira could see tension in his posture. Finally, he spoke, voice low, "We don't know, but it hunts the living. It senses weakness." Fear struck Mira like a lightning bolt. Her body ached, her energy drained, and now the unknown hunted her. She felt exposed, a lone prey in a world that had forgotten mercy. The sled glided faster, but the shadows moved faster. Shapes flickered at the edge of her vision, and whispers seemed to ride the wind, soft, mocking, inhuman. Myra's mind wanted to believe it was hallucination, but the rescuers' urgent glances told her it was real. Suddenly, a shriek pierced the cold. One of the rescuers swung around, blaster in hand, firing into the air. The sound echoed across the ice, a jagged crack that made Mira flinch. Whatever was out there had felt it, whatever it was. The leader of the group, the woman with sharp eyes, barked orders. "Keep moving. Don't stop." Their sled maneuvered around a jagged ice ridge, narrowly avoiding a crevasse that seemed to yawn like a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. Mira clutched the sled, her lullaby long forgotten. Every nerve screamed that danger was close, closer than she realized. She glanced at the shadows. They weren't chasing, they were circling. Waiting. Watching. Patient predators in a frozen wasteland. Her saviors slowed briefly to regroup. Mira finally saw their faces, faintly illuminated under their hoods. Determination carved every line. They were humans, yes, but hardened, trained, like they had survived things Mira couldn't even imagine. "You're safe for now," the woman said, though her voice lacked comfort. "But the wasteland isn't done with you, or any of us." Mira wanted to ask where they were taking her, but she didn't. Her mind was too consumed with the shadows behind the sled. She felt them like cold fingers brushing the back of her neck. And then, silence. The wind dropped suddenly. The shadows vanished. Myra's pulse slowed, just slightly, but a deeper fear took hold. The calm meant something was coming. Something bigger, more patient. Waiting for the perfect moment. Her eyes darted around, trying to pierce the whiteness. She couldn't see it, but she could feel it, an intelligence in the ice, a predator in the snow. Myra's body tensed. Every instinct screamed, survive, or die. The sled slid over the frozen wasteland. The rescuers were silent now, scanning and moving with precision. Mira whispered the last words of her lullaby under her breath. It felt strange, but comforting, a tether to her humanity amid the icy terror. Her journey had begun in the snow, but the true fight was only starting. Behind her, the shadows waited. Ahead, the outpost glimmered faintly, a promise of safety or a trap. The frozen wastes were alive. And Mira had nowhere to hide. The sled carried Mira faster than she had ever moved through the frozen wasteland, but the cold no longer burned her skin. Fear had replaced it. Every gust of wind seemed alive, carrying whispers that teased her mind. She hunched closer, pressing herself to the sled, and her eyes darted across the endless snow. Something was watching. The rescuers' eyes were sharp, scanning constantly. The leader, the woman with glowing eyes, muttered to herself, "It's close, closer than before." Mira wanted to ask what it was, but a shiver of instinct stopped her. She felt it, the presence of something intelligent, something waiting. The ice beneath them groaned. Tiny fissures spread like spiderwebs, and the sled jolted as if the ground itself resented their passage. Myra's stomach churned. The wasteland wasn't just cold, it was alive. Every shadow, every ripple in the ice whispered threats. She shivered violently, not from cold, but from the feeling of unseen eyes. Suddenly, a piercing screech tore across the air. Myra's heart jumped into her throat. The rescuers pivoted instantly, weapons raised. The shadows that had stalked her before weren't just shadows, they were moving, shifting forms, translucent yet terrifyingly solid. One flickered too close, brushing the sled. Mira gasped. The cold wasn't from the air, it was from the creature itself. The leader shouted, "Hold your ground. Keep moving." The sled accelerated, but the creatures multiplied. They seemed to rise from the ice, forming shapes that twisted and lunged at the edges of her vision. Mira felt trapped in a living nightmare. Her mind reeled. How could such things exist? Her world had rules, gravity, life, death, but the ice obeyed none of them. It bent and twisted, forming these predators. And they were drawn to her. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears, a drum signaling her vulnerability. "Why me?" she whispered, almost to herself. The tall rescuer beside her, silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was cold but steady, "Because you carry something they want." Mira froze. What do you mean?" "They can sense it," he said. "The signal. Your blood, your mission, it resonates in the ice. That's why they've hunted you." Her mind spun. She thought the raiders were the only threat, but this was something else. Something older, smarter, and hungrier than anything she had ever faced. The whispers grew louder, now almost words, twisting into a language she couldn't understand but somehow knew meant danger. A shadow lunged from the ice, striking the sled with a deafening crash. Mira screamed, gripping the edges with all her strength. Sparks of energy from the rescuer's weapon crackled, illuminating the monstrous form. It twisted, not quite solid, yet not entirely empty. Eyes like frozen coals glared at her. The sled veered sharply, narrowly avoiding a fissure that split the ice beneath them. Myra's pulse raced. The wasteland had turned from a frozen tomb into a living trap. Every second counted, every mistake could be the last. The woman with glowing eyes shouted over the roar of the wind, we can't stay on the surface much longer. They'll overwhelm us. Myra's teeth chattered, not from cold, but from terror and anticipation. Where are we going?" she managed to ask. "To the rift," the leader answered grimly. "There's a shelter below the ice. If we survive the descent, you might live to finish your mission." Myra's mission. The weight of it pressed on her like a stone. She had been running blindly, surviving only to reach the outpost. But now, it wasn't just survival. It was a race against something beyond human comprehension. The sled approached a jagged crevasse, a yawning mouth in the ice. The shadows swirled, almost daring them to enter. With a collective effort, the rescuers guided the sled over the edge. Myra's stomach lurched as gravity pulled, but the sled held. They descended into darkness, the snow and wind replaced by a deafening silence. The shadows followed, circling the mouth of the crevasse, waiting. Mira pressed herself close to the sled, whispering the lullaby under her breath, trying to cling to a thread of hope. Below, the ice rift opened into a hollowed cavern, walls shimmering with frost that glowed faintly blue. The air was still, the silence heavy. Mira realized the shadows had not followed. For now, they were safe, or as safe as one could be in a living nightmare. The leader knelt beside Mira, her glowing eyes meeting hers. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The ice will test us. And it will demand a price." Mira nodded weakly, gripping the sled. She didn't understand what awaited her, but she knew one thing: she had survived the wasteland so far. And she would survive the darkness beneath it, no matter what. The ice whispered. And Mira listened. The air in the ice cavern was heavy, tinged with a strange electric hum. Myra's teeth chattered, not from cold, but from fear and anticipation. The walls glowed faint blue, reflecting off the slick ice floor like 1,000 ghostly eyes. She glanced around. The rescuers were tense, weapons ready, scanning every shadow. "Stay close," the woman with glowing eyes warned. "The ice here, it has memory. It remembers every step you take." Mira shivered. Memory? The words made her skin crawl. She didn't know what to expect, but instinct told her this place was alive. Watching. Judging. They moved deeper into the cavern, the sled now acting as a small light against the darkness. Mira could hear faint whispers again, like voices carried on the ice itself. They weren't words she understood, but they carried meaning, warnings. Threats. Promises of pain. Suddenly, the ice beneath them cracked. Mira stumbled, nearly falling. The rescuers raised their weapons. "It's testing us," the tall man said. "The ice always tests the weak." Mira swallowed hard. Weak. She had survived the wasteland, the shadows, and the blizzard, but now, she felt her courage faltering. Her hands shook, and her heart pounded like a war drum. As they pressed on, the cavern opened into a massive chamber. The ceiling shimmered like liquid glass, and the floor was broken into jagged ice platforms. Across the chamber, something moved, something enormous. Mira froze. Her mind refused to believe it. The creature was massive, taller than the rescuers, its body partially translucent and shimmering like frozen water. Its eyes were black voids, deep and intelligent, scanning them. It moved with slow, deliberate grace, yet every motion radiated power. One of the rescuers whispered, "The warden." Mira didn't understand, but the word sent shivers down her spine. The warden, the thing she had heard rumors of in the outpost, but never truly believed. Legend said it was the guardian of the frozen wastes, a creature that fed on fear and hunted those who trespassed. The warden tilted its head, studying Mira. She felt its gaze pierce her soul. She wanted to look away, but curiosity and terror anchored her eyes to its form. The air crackled around it, a subtle electric tension that made her skin prickle. Why am I here?" Mira whispered, voice trembling. The tall rescuer's visor reflected the icy glow. Because you carry what they seek, and because you survived. Few do. The warden shifted, and the ice beneath them groaned. Platforms cracked, creating sudden gaps in their path. The sled jolted violently. Mira gasped, clutching the edges. One false step and they would fall into a frozen abyss. The woman with glowing eyes shouted orders, guiding the sled across the broken ice. Mira noticed something horrifying: the warden wasn't moving closer. It didn't need to. The cavern itself seemed alive, bending and shifting to block their path. Ice rose like walls, fissures opened, and the floor trembled. The whispers grew louder, now almost voices. Mira recognized a pattern: they weren't random. They were counting. Seconds. Steps. Heartbeats. Each whisper a warning: one wrong move, and death would follow. Mira's mind raced. She remembered the lullaby she had whispered in the snow. The melody, simple yet haunting, filled her mind. Without thinking, she sang softly, letting the words guide her. The ice trembled around her, but the warden paused, as if listening. The rescuers glanced at her, surprise evident even under their helmets. The woman with glowing eyes muttered, "The old songs, they calm it." But only for a moment. Mira's heart pounded. She had survived the wasteland, the shadows, and the descent into the ice cavern, but the warden was a different kind of threat. Smart. Patient. Ancient. And it wanted what she carried. The path ahead narrowed. Jagged ice towers rose like teeth, and the warden followed, gliding silently. Mira realized this was no longer just a journey to survival. It was a test, a trial of courage, wit, and determination. One mistake, one faltering heartbeat, and the ice would claim them all. She tightened her grip, whispering the lullaby once more. The sound echoed softly, reverberating through the cavern. The warden paused, its black eyes fixed on her, studying, waiting. And in that frozen silence, Mira understood, the real battle was just beginning. The ice had chosen her. The warden had noticed her. And somewhere deep within her, a spark of defiance ignited. She would survive. She had to. No matter the cost. Mira's breath came in sharp, jagged gasps as the sled edged along the fractured ice path. The warden glided silently behind them, its black eyes like voids that threatened to swallow her courage. Every step was a gamble. Every heartbeat echoed in the cavern like a warning bell. The ice beneath them trembled. Jagged columns shifted, blocking the path, creating narrow passages that seemed impossible to navigate. Mira gripped the sled, teeth chattering, not from cold, but from a growing sense of dread. The lullaby she had sung before echoed faintly in her mind, a fragile tether to hope. Suddenly, a loud crack split the cavern. A massive shard of ice toppled toward them. The rescuers reacted instantly, swinging their weapons to generate pulses of energy that shattered the falling ice midair. Mira felt the force rattle through the sled, and a chill ran down her spine. The warden was close, too close. "We need to move faster," the woman with glowing eyes shouted. "It's learning our patterns. It's testing us." Mira's heart pounded. She realized that the warden wasn't just hunting, it was strategizing. Each movement they made, every step, was being observed, analyzed. Survival wasn't enough, they had to outsmart it. The cavern opened into a vast chamber, the ceiling shimmering like liquid crystal. In the center was a massive ice formation pulsing faintly with blue light. The rescuers exchanged glances, tension etched into their faces. "That's it," the tall rescuer muttered. "The heart of the ice." Mira frowned. "The heart? It's what powers the warden and the entire cavern," the woman explained. "If we can reach it, maybe we can control the ice, or at least distract it long enough to survive." Mira's stomach churned. The heart looked fragile but glowing with an intense, almost alive energy. The warden circled the chamber, watching, waiting. Every step toward the heart was a risk. One mistake could be fatal. The sled moved carefully, guided by the rescuers. Mira could feel the cavern pulse with every inch they advanced. Shadows flickered along the walls, whispering and writhing, as if the ice itself were alive. Her pulse raced faster than ever. Suddenly, a shadow lunged from above, crashing into the sled. Mira screamed. Sparks flew as the rescuers fired their energy weapons, creating a brilliant flash that illuminated the chamber. The warden surged forward, a terrifying blur of dark ice and power. Mira's chest tightened with fear. "Now," the woman shouted. Mira instinctively stepped forward, touching the heart of the ice. A surge of energy rippled through her body. Pain. Power. Fear. It all collided, and she felt the ice around them respond. The shadows hesitated. The warden paused, its black eyes focusing entirely on her. Something inside Mira awakened. She didn't know if it was courage, instinct, or pure human defiance, but she realized she could influence the ice. Just a little, but enough. A shard of ice shifted, blocking the warden's path. Another tremor shook the floor, slowing the creature's advance. The rescuers moved with precision, exploiting the momentary advantage. Mira felt the lullaby rise in her mind again, not just a song now, but a connection to the ice, a whisper of humanity within the frozen heart of the wasteland. But the warden was relentless. It roared, a sound that reverberated through the chamber like crashing glaciers, and surged forward, faster, smarter, angrier. Mira realized this was no longer just about reaching the outpost. It was about proving that human will could challenge the impossible. The heart pulsed under her hands. Energy flowed into her, a dangerous, intoxicating power. The ice trembled. Shadows hissed. The warden froze, as if sensing something it hadn't before, a human capable of matching its strength with will alone. Mira's lips moved in a silent lullaby, the melody simple but commanding. The ice shivered and cracked, not as a threat, but as a weapon under her guidance. The warden recoiled, shocked by her audacity. She gasped, her body weak, trembling from the exertion. But in that moment, she understood, the heart of the ice wasn't just power, it was a test. A test to see if humans could survive, adapt, and challenge the impossible. The cavern fell silent for a heartbeat. The shadows retreated. The warden paused. Mira, exhausted but determined, felt the first flicker of hope. She had survived the wasteland, the descent, and the ice itself. But this was only the beginning. The ice whispered. Mira listened. And she knew one thing for certain: humanity had arrived in the frozen heart of the wasteland, and it would fight to survive, no matter the cost. The cavern trembled beneath them as Mira pressed her hands against the glowing heart of the ice. Every pulse sent shivers through her body, a strange mix of pain and energy that made her feel alive in a way she had never known. The warden watched, its black eyes filled with something that looked almost like curiosity. "Keep focus," the woman with glowing eyes barked. "It will try to break you, mentally, physically, everything." Mira nodded, though she barely felt her own body. Energy surged through her, and the ice responded, shifting beneath the warden's massive form. For a moment, it hesitated. Then, with a roar that shook the cavern, it lunged. The sled jolted violently as the rescuers fired, but the warden moved with impossible speed, slicing through the air like a shadow made solid. Mira's heart pounded as she realized that raw strength alone would not defeat it. She had to think. She had to act. Her mind raced back to the lullaby, the one she had sung in the wasteland, the one that had kept her sane, the one that had drawn the rescuers to her. She began humming softly, letting the vibrations flow through her hands into the heart. The cavern hummed in response, the ice itself bending slightly, forming barriers between them and the warden. The warden growled, a low, guttural sound that echoed through the ice. It attacked again, more aggressively, testing her every reaction. Myra's pulse quickened. She realized the warden wasn't just a creature, it was intelligent. It learned, adapted, and exploited weaknesses. But so could she. Remember, Mira, the tall rescuer shouted, it reacts to fear. Control it with your will. Myra's mind cleared. Fear was a weapon the warden thrived on, but hope, determination, and courage could be stronger. She closed her eyes and focused, letting every ounce of human spirit flow into the heart. The ice shimmered, forming glowing barriers, shifting into spikes and walls that slowed the warden's approach. The cavern became a battlefield of wills. Shadow and ice collided with determination and hope. Mira felt her body trembling from exertion, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. She realized something astounding: she could influence the ice, but only because she believed in survival, in humanity, in herself. The warden paused, its massive head tilting. It had never encountered a human like this, one who could fight back without weapons, one who commanded not through strength, but through sheer will. Mira smiled faintly, though exhaustion threatened to consume her. Suddenly, the ice beneath the warden cracked violently. Mira hadn't planned it, the cavern was alive, responding to the struggle, amplifying her determination. The warden roared in frustration, slamming its massive claws into the ice, sending shards flying in all directions. Mira ducked instinctively, barely avoiding a spike of ice that pierced the floor where she had stood moments before. The rescuers fought to maintain balance, their weapons firing continuously, but Mira realized the truth: they could not defeat it with tools or firepower alone. She rose to her feet on the sled, letting her lullaby rise in volume, letting the melody flow into the ice, into the heart, into the cavern itself. The glowing blue energy pulsed violently, and the warden recoiled. Its form flickered, almost losing cohesion, as if it were struggling against an invisible force. "Now, Mira," the woman shouted. "Push it. Control the heart." Summoning the last reserves of her strength, Mira pressed her palms firmly against the glowing ice. She let the melody guide her, let the rhythm of survival and human courage flow through every vein, every heartbeat. The ice around the warden shimmered, forming chains of pure energy that held it in place. The warden roared one final time, a sound that shook the cavern to its core. Its black eyes locked onto hers, and for a fleeting moment, Mira saw something: recognition, respect, fear? She didn't know, but she didn't have time to ponder. With one final surge, the ice chains tightened, immobilizing the warden. The shadows retreated. The cavern grew still. Mira collapsed onto the sled, gasping for breath, sweat and frost mingling on her skin. The rescuers rushed to her side, awe in their eyes. "You did it," the woman said, her voice soft but reverent. "You commanded the ice, and survived." Myra's lips trembled. She had survived the wasteland, the shadows, the descent into the heart of the ice, and now, the warden. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel hope. But even as she sat there, shivering and exhausted, she sensed it: the ice whispered again. Not with malice, not yet, but with promise. The wasteland was still alive, and Myra's journey was far from over. She had won this battle, but the war for survival in the frozen wastes, and the mysteries of humanity's place in this strange world, had only just begun. And Mira, alive, determined, and unbroken, knew she was ready. The cavern was silent now, but the tension lingered like a storm about to break. Myra's body trembled with exhaustion, every muscle screaming in protest. Yet her mind was sharper than ever. The warden, trapped beneath the glowing chains of the heart of the ice, writhed but did not attack. Its black eyes followed her, filled with intelligence and something almost reverence. Mira rose on unsteady legs, her palms still glowing faintly from the heart's energy. The rescuers flanked her, weapons ready, scanning every shadow. The ice around them shimmered as if alive, responding to her heartbeat, her will, her courage. She realized something incredible: she was no longer just a survivor. She was a force of humanity in the frozen wasteland. "We need to move," the woman with glowing eyes said. "The warden may be restrained, but the cavern isn't done testing us." Mira nodded. She had learned to listen to the ice, to understand its whispers. It was alive, yes, but it respected strength and determination. She led the sled across the fractured floor, the glowing heart pulsing rhythmically under her hands. Suddenly, the shadows that had haunted them for days reappeared, swirling in a storm of dark energy. The warden roared, but this time it did not attack. They moved with purpose, circling as if warning Mira of a greater threat. Her pulse quickened. Something else was coming. Something beyond even the warden's power. A massive crack split the cavern floor, and from it rose a colossal figure of ice and shadow, larger than anything Mira had faced. Its form flickered between solid and ghostly, and its eyes glowed with a cold, intelligent fury. The whispers became deafening, like 1,000 voices chanting in unison. Mira took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the heart surge through her. She stepped forward, raising her hands. The lullaby she had whispered in the wasteland, in the ice cavern, now rose in her voice, strong and commanding. The notes rippled through the chamber, and the shadows recoiled. The colossal figure paused, recognizing something it had never encountered: a human who could influence the very essence of the frozen world. Mira realized that courage, hope, and resilience were not just human traits, they were weapons. The heart pulsed violently. Energy shot from Myra's hands, forming barriers, spikes, and chains of blue light that twisted around the shadowy figure. The warden, once her enemy, now stood beside her, responding to her command. Together, human and guardian formed a force of resistance against the new threat. The shadow surged forward, striking with incredible speed. Myra's vision blurred as ice shards flew. She concentrated, letting every ounce of willpower flow into the heart. Her lullaby rose louder, echoing across the cavern like a war cry. The shadows shrieked and faltered under the force of her resolve. With a final surge, Mira directed the energy of the heart toward the colossal figure. The ice chains wrapped around it, binding it to the cavern floor. It roared, a sound that shook the very foundations of the cavern, then froze, struggling against the impossible. Mira fell to her knees, panting, trembling, but victorious. The cavern grew quiet, the shadows retreating, the warden kneeling beside her in acknowledgement. The ice hummed softly, no longer hostile, but reverent. Mira realized she had not only survived, the wasteland had recognized her strength, her humanity. The rescuers approached, awe and relief in their eyes. The woman with glowing eyes spoke softly, almost reverently, "You've done what no human has before. You've survived, and you've earned the respect of the ice itself." Mira nodded weakly. Her body ached, but her spirit soared. She had faced death, shadows, and the living ice, and emerged stronger. She had discovered that humanity's true power was not in weapons or machines, but in courage, will, and the refusal to surrender. Outside, faint light crept into the cavern. Dawn had arrived, painting the ice with golden hues. Mira stood, looking toward the horizon. The frozen wasteland still stretched endlessly, full of dangers and mysteries, but she no longer felt fear. She felt purpose. She had been on the edge of death, chased by shadows, hunted by the ice itself. But she had survived. Mira, human and unbroken, had faced the impossible, and proven that even in the coldest, deadliest places, humanity could endure. The frozen dawn cast long shadows across the cavern, but Myra's own shadow stretched taller than ever. She was alive. She was strong. And the story of her courage, of human resilience, was only beginning. The ice whispered again, softly this time, almost like a song. Mira smiled. She had listened, and it had listened back. The frozen wasteland was no longer a prison. It was a proving ground. And Mira was ready for whatever came next.